More than 10,000 Air Canada flight attendants are preparing to walk off the job. A strike could start as early as this Saturday if the union and airline are unable to come to a deal. The CBC's Nicole Williams is standing by Toronto Pearson Airport with the latest. Nicole, where do things stand now between the union and the airline?
I think it is fair to say after today, they are extremely far apart. These two sides had very intense interactions today, kind of with these dueling press conferences, starting with Air Canada executives talking to reporters this morning, trying to say that, you know, we have come to the table with an extremely fair deal. They say they've offered the union representing flight attendants a 38% wage increase over 4 years, as well as an offer to compensate for ground work. As we know, flight attendants don't actually currently get paid for the work that they do prior to the doors of the flight closing. So they say their latest offer includes that. It is more than fair. And in fact, this latest proposal would make flight attendants for Air Canada the best paid flight attendants in this country.
We are still available to bargain at any time on the condition that the negotiation has substance. CUPE, for its part, while claiming at every turn they want to reach a deal, wasted 10 precious days, the last 21 days, by refusing to negotiate while they sought a strike mandate. They made the very last days of negotiations meaningless by making unsustainable offers.
Now, the weird thing that happened today, or the interesting thing that happened today, was that flight attendants actually interrupted this press conference. It was a little bit of a tense moment where the executives felt like they were being interrupted. Now, I have to say that the flight attendants, the union members, they didn't actually say anything. They just walked in front of the podium with signs saying, you know, unfair wages, unpaid wages. Regardless, Air Canada deciding to end the press conference right there because presumably they didn't want to give their flight attendants any more airtime on this issue. Now, CUPE had its own press conference today, and we're getting the sense that these two parties really don't seem to be agreeing at all, including what's actually being offered. Take a listen.
Their best offer to date at 8% would still put the junior flight attendants at $2,108 per month. This is still over $700 per month below minimum wage. Sadly, Air Canada has been absent from the bargaining table since Tuesday evening as the clock ticks down towards their lockout deadline of 1:30 a.m. Saturday. We, however, have never left the bargaining table.
So as I said, on one hand, Air Canada is saying 38% wage increase, the union saying we haven't seen such an offer. These two sides, like I said, don't seem to be anywhere close to a deal.
So at this point, what is the federal government saying about this dispute?
Well, Air Canada has actually asked the Minister of Jobs to step in at this point to send the two parties to binding arbitration. Minister Patty Hajdu says she has in fact received this request. She has posed that question to the union, and just over an hour ago she released a statement saying that the union has asked until tomorrow to consider doing this. In a statement, she says she has granted that request. She's wrote to the parties, "I strongly urge you to come to an agreement. Do not waste this precious time. Canadians are counting on you." Because as we've heard, if they do not come to an agreement, we will see 10,000 Air Canada flight attendants walk off the job, and we will see hundreds of thousands of airline passengers have their travel plans disrupted over the coming days.
All right, Nicole Williams at Toronto Pearson Airport, thank you.
You're welcome.
As we mentioned, Air Canada has warned a strike could disrupt travel for roughly 130,000 customers a day. Small businesses are raising concerns about the consequences of a potential strike. Dan Kelly is the president and CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Thank you, Mr. Kelly, for joining us. I want to start. What are you hearing from small businesses in this moment that are concerned about a strike?
All All sorts of stuff. Look, for some, it is the end of the busy travel season. So they've got customers that they're expecting to come in for the last couple of weeks of a summer vacation. And that could be lost. International travelers, travelers from the US or the domestic travel. Secondly, we're hearing a ton from business travelers. This is moving into September. We've been pushing businesses to try to diversify their markets, expand their scope, find new suppliers or new customers in other provinces, or perhaps around the world other than the US. And at this very vulnerable moment, we're now taking out one of those options for business owners to meet with customers or meet with new suppliers from around the world.
You talk about how vulnerable businesses are in this moment. When you take a look at sort of the threat related to tariffs and all of the uncertainty the Canadian economy is facing right now, how much more complicated do things get with the possibility of a strike with Air Canada?
Yeah, look, for my members, I've got 100,000 small businesses as members of CFIB across the country. They haven't had a normal month of sales in 5 years, from the pandemic to the other major rail and port strikes that we faced, to now the tariff disputes with China and the US. And then we add anything else, Canada Post disruptions or the Air Canada strike. I mean, I don't know how many more knocks these guys can take. It is getting really dicey. There are a lot of businesses riding on the edge right now. A strong wind could blow over a bunch of small businesses right now. And, this is just not the time for this kind of thing. Air Canada is just too big and too important. I got to say, quite apart from that, over 10 years, we gave unions more and more power, basically tipping the scale. So employers, especially federally regulated employers, virtually have no powers left. And then we wonder why we're facing these kinds of things. We're turning into France with strikes on major utilities all the time.
What do you want to see the federal government do in this moment?
It needs to step in. I'm happy to hear that the parties apparently seem willing to stay at the table. But if they're not able to get a deal, then the federal government has to immediately step in. They can't let this drag on as they have with some of the other strikes for a few weeks and kick the tires to see whether the parties are serious or not. The economy's too vulnerable for that to happen, and somebody's got to stick up for the economy, for the travelers that would be stranded, for the customers of Air Canada that are counting on getting to their end destination, either for tourism purposes, which is so important, or for business travel. Somebody's got to represent them, and gosh, we're hoping the federal government leans in and makes that happen.
In statements we have seen from the jobs minister, it sort of seems that the approach at this moment is the best kind of deal is one that's negotiated at the table. Do you think jumping in right away, and even if it does get to the point where there is a strike, there is some disruption, should there not be some space given to see if there can be an agreement reached?
Yeah, look, but we've been giving space for that to happen for weeks and weeks and weeks. I don't know why we have to wait until essentially the evening before basically a business is shut down for governments to take action, because travelers are having to make decisions now. They're canceling stuff now. And we can't just gamble and wait to see what happens on Saturday, whether they're serious or not. I get that the government is on a delicate balancing act here, because they obviously want deals to be made by the parties. That is, I agree with the statement that those are the best deals. But where that doesn't seem possible, the federal government can't afford right now for the economy to take it on the chin.
What advice would you give to small business owners right now trying to deal with this uncertainty?
Well, the advice we're giving is, look, they've got to find alternates, although those alternates are running out. We don't have a lot of domestic competition in the airline industry. We have two or three major players. And so there's just not a lot of capacity in the system to shift hundreds of thousands of customers per day to some of these options. So do that where you can, look at virtual options. But my goodness, if you're trying to develop a new trading relationship right now, and you've got an appointment booked overseas or in another province in the next few days, yet again, we're going to be saying, well, the economies will just have to adjust. We can't keep doing that.
What is in this moment, what are you hearing from small businesses in terms of how they're trying to mitigate this?
Look, business owners are scrambling on all sorts of fronts, trying to find new customers where if they're affected by tariffs. The economy is is struggling so much just with the uncertainty over U.S. tariffs that any more uncertainty over major pieces of our transportation infrastructure just can't happen. And that's why this is so desperately needed. But business owners are calling and saying, what am I going to do? How am I going to facilitate this appointment? I've got a customer or a key supplier coming in for a meeting. I can't afford to miss that opportunity. And yet there they are.
All right, Dan Kelly with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, thank you for your time.
Anytime at all.